writing facing upwards, and that's going to be at 7 o'clock. Alright, after you get the rings put on the pistons, you want to first put one circlip on one side, do the inside, and then you want to lubricate your shaft, your pin, with this Turco engine lube, and also do the inside of the rod here. Slide it on. Make sure the arrow is pointing forward. And then
call this one the sexy.
There you go. And after you do that, just put in your other circlip, and that's it. Alright, then you want to fit your gasket on. Make sure the surface is completely clean, and then just slide the gasket over the dowels. This is the copper gasket that comes with the 994 kit. When you put these on brand new, you just put them on dry. So just slide that on, and then you're ready to put your cylinders on. And you want to use these ring compressors. There's different kinds, but these ones have these little wrinkles in them. So once you get the rings compressed and get them all flush against the piston, then the cylinder should actually push this ring compressor down, because it's got these little wrinkles on it, and it'll catch the edge of the cylinder. So I'm going to put these on right now, and then we'll get the cylinder on. So you put these on. You want to try to keep the gaps kind of where they're supposed to be. And go ahead and, when you work on it, try to get it just below the crown, so you can get the crown of the piston in first. On this 994 big bore kit, you want to fit the O-rings, and they're all labeled. These are for the bottom outside fore. The middle is different on the bottom. And what you want to do is get a little grease. You just want to dab like each corner of this O-ring so it sticks into the bottom of your cylinder. Try not to get it everywhere, because you don't want to mess up your seal, your gasket seal. Make sure those are all pressed in there nicely, and that they're not loose at all, because you don't want them falling off as you're lowering the cylinders down. They're going to be upside down for a while. Alright, so now you're ready to lower the cylinders on. First thing you want to do is feed the chain up through where the chain goes. Just flip it, yeah. Go for it. Okay, and after that's secure, what you want to do, make sure your pistons are level with each other. And you want to just lower them slowly down, just so the if they're not level, like yeah, it looks like they're not, huh?
No, you
Go down on this one, yeah. Alright, it wasn't easy, but got these on finally. It took several attempts because the rings kept popping out of the ring holders. It's really tough to to hold the pistons level, so it just slides in easy. What we ended up having to do is once we got the rings in, it was a little cocked in there, so just hold the actual cylinders level and then just spin the crank and make sure you get the pistons level, and then it'll slide all the way down a little bit easier. Alright, after you get your cylinder on, go ahead and get your bolts, all your bolts in. You want to torque those to 10 Newton meters. Alright, so after the cylinders are on, you got your studs in. It's very important to make sure that your timing mark is lined up on your alternator. There's an R and an L on here. You want to line up the L with the line on the crankcase. So I already have it lined up. That's what the cylinders will look like. This is on the 270 motor. So the Bonneville motor might be a little different. Then you're ready to feed your cylinder or your head onto your cylinders. Make sure your surface is clean. Put the gasket on. Fit your breather tube on. Put new O-rings on there. Smear some oil on the O-rings. And then you also have 4 O-rings on this kit that fit into the slots on the front of the cylinders here. You want to feed your cam chain up through the slot on the head, and then it's ready to go on. So you just want to line everything up. Make sure your dowels are in there as well. Then just pop it over. It's going to feel a little friction on the breather tube from that O-ring. It should just slide right on though. I'm just going to give it a little tap. It's almost on except for over this rear dowel. So I'm just going to use a soft mallet hammer. Give it a little tap in. Good on that side. And there you go. Now you're ready to put the nuts on top of all your studs here. You just want to hand tighten everything at first. Okay, so next is to torque all the bolts down. It's a 3-stage process. You want to make sure you follow the guidelines, what it says in the book, and basically you just want to go in a crisscross pattern 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And your first torque values are going to be, and this is a little different than what the book says, and I'm not sure if that's with the block and the copper gaskets or what, but these torque values are what Triumph Performance USA told me. The first torque value is going to be 15 foot-pounds, which is the equivalent of 20.25 Newton meters. The second torque value is 30 foot-pounds, or 40.75 Newton meters, and then it's finished off with a 90 degree turn on all of them. So when you're torquing these, go ahead and go all the way through all of them in order. And I went through one time, just tightened all of them a little bit before I got to my first torque value, just to make sure the head goes on evenly. So then I'm going to start again with my first one. And still on my first torque value here. Now you can go through and do stage 2 of your torquing, which is 40.75 Newton meters. Okay, and then your final stage of torquing is to go 90 degrees past where you're just at. Alright, so after you've done all the torquing on your head bolts, you want to put in your cam chain front guide. Before you do this, make sure the cam chain is aligned on the crank. That looks good. And then you could slide this down, make sure the chain kind of stays in the groove. And attach the 2 bolts. Make sure they don't fall down in there. Looks good. And then you want to torque these down to 10 Newton meters. Alright, next you want to fit the cam chain tensioner blade. Go ahead and feed it through down there. Feed the bolt through, and then the nut and washer go on the outside. And you want to also torque this to 10 Newton meters. Then you want to install your cam chain drive gear. First, get a rag, stuff it down in there. That way your 2 washers on your gear, they're actually on the inside, so you want to make sure those don't fall in there. Go ahead and grab take your wire out if you still have your wire in there. And when you're doing this, really try not to pull too much on the chain, just so you don't pull the actual crankshaft in any direction. You really want to keep that timing mark lined up. So after you have that out, go ahead and get your gear in there. The top mark faces the right side, and you got 2 washers on either side. I actually got a little bit of that that turco grease, and I just put it on the inside of these washers just so they kind of stick and don't just fall immediately down. So you want to get your gear, just scoop up the chain. Now the key is you want to keep the top mark in the center while you're doing this, and you really don't want to turn that crank at all. I'm just going to slip a little magnet through here. That way these washers don't fall. While I get this lined up. That seems pretty good right there. The only thing is you want the cam chain tensioner somewhat engaged when you do this, and you may have to realign after you tension it. There's also 2 lines that you want parallel. They're horizontal lines. You want those parallel with the cylinder head. That's looking pretty good right there. So make sure my washers are on there. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna come through the other way, and I'm just gonna go ahead and push that out with this guy. Make sure my rags aren't in the way. I almost lost that washer. Go, that's good. So now you can see I got it all timed, the tops level. This is before you put the cam chain tensioner on. Push in through the slot where it's at, and you'll see it spin a little right there. And that's I went 1 tooth to the right, 1 tooth to the left, and that's the best it's going to be. So I know I'm at top dead center. My alternator's still lined up. Now you want to put in your bolt. And this wants to be tightened down to 10 Newton meters. Alright, next you want to put on your cam chain tensioner. Fit a new gasket on it, make sure it's all nice and clean first, make sure your case surface is nice and clean. And what you want to do is you want to load the tensioner, and the way you do that is you just push down on the ratchet release, push it all the way in, and then pull it out until it engages on the first click there, and then go ahead and fit your new bolts. These want to be torqued to 9 Newton meters. After you've attached the housing, go ahead and attach the center bolt with a spring. Make sure the washer's on there, and just feed it in there. See it? You could hear that engaging, and that's just tensioning the cam or the chain right there. And then you want to just thread it on. And that wants to be torqued to 20 Newton meters. Alright, so before you fit your cams back on, what you want to do is check the valve clearances. One other thing on these cam gears, to differentiate between the intake and the exhaust, they put a groove right here, and that's when the groove is the intake, and the one without the groove looks like that. That's your exhaust. So very important when you're measuring these, make sure the exhaust is on the exhaust side and the intake is on the intake side. Before you put the cam in and you put your buckets and your shims on, make sure your buckets are all going back to where they came off of. That's very important. You should have had those labeled when you took them apart. What you want to do is drop like a pen or a screwdriver into your spark plug hole, and you want to turn your alternator until your pistons drop down top dead center on these. One piston is up and one is down. You want to make them so they're both about halfway. That way when you put this in, when you put this cam in and you're turning it by hand, you're not going to press against the pistons at any point if both of them are in the middle. Put your cam in, have the lobes both going to the side so none of them are touching, and then you want to hand tighten them all your bolts, and you're going to torque them down to the specified setting, and then with a wrench you're going to, by hand, here's your wrench spot. It's a 22 millimeter. These are the 813 cams. What you want to do is spin it by hand until you could check your valve clearances on one side, and then you could go ahead and spin it through and check them on the other side. So after you have all your caps hand tightened, made sure that they're all in the right spot, facing the right direction, make sure it's the right cam, then go ahead and torque each cap down evenly, and in the sequence of if you're working on your exhaust, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and you torque them to 10 Newton meters. After you have the caps torqued down, you want to get your wrench, and you want to spin the camshaft until the lobes are facing directly away from their valves. That looks about right. A little more. And that looks pretty good right there. And then you want to get your filler gauges. I'm hoping that I have any clearance at all in there. These shims might just be way too big, and then you just want to start with your smallest one and work your way up. Alright, that's good. So the smallest gauge I could actually fit on these two are the smallest filler gauge, which is .0015 4.5. So go ahead and write that down as your clearance for those two valves, and then you want to move on to your other side. After you've checked your valve clearances, go ahead and evenly, progressively slacken the bolts and take the caps off, and then you're ready to do the other side. After you've done the exhaust side, you want to do the same thing for the intake side. I've already hand tightened all the bolts down, and the torquing sequence for the intake caps are 4, 5, 6. So you want to torque those in order. And you want to do these, you want to be a little bit more careful with these because there actually is pressure all the way through, even with the lobes not fully down. So just evenly through. So after you've taken all your valve clearances, then you want to pop each shim out, write down what each shim is, and write down that shim size. So you just measure with a micrometer. That's 0.114 in the first one. You're going to write that down, and then you're going to take these values and figure out what your new shims need to be. Alright, so once you've measured all your clearances and you have your correct shim sizes on each cap, go ahead and put your buckets back on, and then you're ready to put your gears, your cams in. So you want to make sure the motor is at top dead center. So if it's out of top dead center, make sure you put it back in, and that means the top mark's going to be lined up on the top of this gear, and the mark on the L is also going to be lined up on the alternator rotor. And then I am not putting the backlash gears in. The reason for that is because these cams are not the factory cams. What I was told by the guys at South Bay, basically the backlash gear is only needed because the cams are kind of sloppy. They're not smooth enough coming from the factory. So these ones, you just don't need it, and you also lose a couple horsepower, like 1.5 horsepower, using the backlash gear. So when you install this, you want to make sure you're putting the intake in on the intake side. The intake has the groove right there, and then there's a dot here and a line here. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just want to put the dot in the middle of the two dots, just like that. And then on your exhaust gear, you just line up the lines. And just slip right in. Before you put your caps on, you want to make sure that you lube all the journals of your cams, and also the head and the caps. And I just use that Turco engine assembly lube for that. And then you want to fit your caps on. And then same thing, you just want to get these all hand tight before you torque them. And you'll notice the valves do kind of sit, the lobes do kind of sit against the buckets, so there's going to be a lot of pressure when you tighten these down on the caps. That's why you want to do them evenly in the order shown. If you don't do that, then you'll break one of these caps. I'm just going to do one side at a time. All these bolts want to get torqued down to 10 Newton meters. But before I do that, I'm just going to basically go about a half turn on each one. And I should actually be going in a different order. It's just the order is 1, 2, 3. So you want to start on the far right one. There you go, and then just repeat the same thing for the exhaust side. So it goes in the same order, goes right, left, middle. And then you got your cams in, and you're ready to put in the oil breather pipe. Once your caps are all torqued down, then fit your breather pipe, smear some oil on the new O-ring, fit it with some new sealing washers. And you want to torque these bolts down to 8 Newton meters. And once you have your oil breather pipe installed, you're ready to install your cover. Make sure you got your gasket fit in there properly, and the washers go metal side up. Make sure those are on your bolts, and you want to torque all your bolts to 14 Newton meters, and then you're done with your head. Next, you want to attach your ignition pickup coil if you haven't done so already. And what you want to do is, if your timing marks are all lined up still, then you should have one of these little tabs right here, which basically these tabs go across the pickup coil, and that's your spark timing off the motor. So what you want to do is attach the coil. First, just get it threaded in there. Go ahead and just thread these in by hand first. You don't want to tighten these down yet. Just get them in by hand, like I said. And make sure the sensor on the coil is lined up directly over one of the tabs. And then you want to set the gap, and the gap is 1 millimeter. Once you get your filler gauge in there, go ahead and just press down on the top of the sensor, and that way you know that that gap is set exactly. Once you have that in there, then you could go ahead and tighten it down a bit so that sensor won't move. You want to torque those down to 10 Newton meters. So after you've torqued it down to 10 Newton meters, you want to feed it under and then around the first one, and there's 2 little notches here. You want to pop it in those notches so the wire keeps in the holder. And then through the other one, and then it'll sit just like that. Alright, after you've fed the wire through the wire holder on your pickup coil, then you want to get a little of your 1194 3-bond and just apply a bit of it to the outside of your little rubber grommet here. That's just gonna sit right in there like that. That's probably gonna keep popping out. But anyways, keep that in there. Then you also want to put some the same stuff on the rubber grommet on your coil cable. And I just take a couple drops of this stuff and kind of just dab it on the edges of some of the places. That way the gasket stays in place. And this pickup coil grommet is just going to keep wanting to push, but once you get that case on, it'll lock it in, make a nice seal, nice and tight. So the biggest thing is just make sure your holes are lined up, because when you get this cover close to here, it's gonna just suck on. You also want to watch your fingers, make sure they don't get pinched in there. So I'm just gonna get the top on first here. That. Make sure all my holes are lined up. They are. I'm actually gonna use the case to kind of pull it all together here. So that looks pretty good. I can see all my holes there. So just go ahead and give it a little press. Right now it's just being held on by the magnets. Once that's all pressed on, your holes are all lined up for your gasket, then you can get your bolts and start torquing the case down. So after you got all the bolts put in, then you just want to torque it in a kind of crisscross pattern, and you torque them to 9 Newton meters. Next you want to install your gear change cover. Fit it with a new gasket, make sure it's all nice and clean, same deal. There's 2 dowels, make sure those are in there, and you're ready. There's also a wire holder that goes onto this bolt right here, so make sure that goes on as well. I'm going to hold off on that one bolt because I have not put the neutral switch in yet, and that's what that wire holder holds. I'm going to wait till I get it onto the bike. Next you want to fit in your clutch cable shaft, and basically you feed it in through the top, and there's a little hole at the bottom of this base. You want to make sure that spring goes into that hole, so just go ahead and get it in there, and it'll slide over it like that. And then you want to continue to push it down, and then just spin counterclockwise until the spring engages in here. If you keep spinning it around, you want to get your little bullet here, and make sure that that's all sitted in there properly. And then this bullet, if you twist this to the left and push, you'll feel it engage like that. And when it's engaged, if you put your finger over it and you twist counterclockwise, you'll feel that bullet go out. You want to make sure that that engages in before you put the cover on. And now you're ready to put your clutch cover on. You want to make sure, very important, that this little washer, the wavy washer, is on your starter gear. And also make sure that the button that you installed is the inside of your case and functioning properly. Once you have those two things set, I put a few dabs of the liquid gasket around the edge of the case just to keep the paper gasket in place, because this thing's kind of floppy. And you just want to make sure all your dowels are in your case. There's 4 of them on this side, and then I'm just going to kind of tack it to all my little, I put very little, just tiny little dabs of this liquid gasket. Grab your case. You want to feed it over your gear change arm, and then there's a breather tube up top. You want to make sure that goes into the right hole, and this thing's just gonna slam on. The way these bolts go, there's 4 bigger bolts on the outside on the right, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the smaller bolts. Those go on the bottom, and then there's one with the Allen bit that follows the small ones on the left side. And then there's one, the next size bolt up. Those go along the top, except for 2 that are slightly larger, and that's for your clutch cable holder right here. Once you get all that hand tightened and you get the cover on, you want to torque them all to 12 Newton meters. Alright, and that's the last bolt. Everything's put together. There she is. 994 big bore. Got some head work done on it. Acrylo rods. Nice new paint job. And that is how you put together a motor for your very first time. Now, have a beer, because you deserve it. Alright, here's a moment of truth. There she is, all in. Keys on. It's working.